Welcome to EOZ TV. I'm Elder.
Mrs. Elder.
Today we're going to talk a little bit about UNRWA, something I saw that was interesting. You know what UNRWA is, right?
Yes, I do.
The United Nations Relief and Works Agency. We've talked about it before. I've talked about it at length. I just saw an article in Ma'an in Arabic. Nothing wrong with this article. It says that UNRWA opened up a new school in the West Bank in Kalkia.
Well, I'd like to hear more about it.
Sure, there's nothing wrong with opening up a school. That's what their job is.
No.
And so it's fine. But in the article, and again, there was only in Arabic I saw it, in the article I saw that, I didn't mean to do that, it was they had a celebration about everything's nice, talking about how great the school environment was, et cetera, et cetera. And it says that it's a girls' school that they opened. The Kalkia Basic Girls' School is funded by the AQSA Fund, managed by the Islamic Development Bank.
Okay.
So I was curious a little bit about this AQSA Fund. It sounded slightly familiar what this AQSA Fund is. So let's...
so tell me more. If
you go to the Islamic Development Bank website, you can find out exactly what it is. They opened up in October 2000.
Okay.
This bank created two funds, and we can read it over here. The Al-Quds Intifada Fund and the Al-Aqsa Fund.
Okay.
The Al-Quds Intifada Fund and the Al-Aqsa Fund are two funds that are established by the Arab leaders at the summit held in Cairo, Egypt in October 2000 to assert comprehensive Arab support for the Palestinian people in the face of a continuous Israeli aggression. The objectives: the Al-Quds Intifada Fund aims at providing assistance to the families of victims and wounded persons to provide health care and education services to their children. In other words, it's meant to pay terrorists and their families.
Whoa. Whoa.
The objective of the Al-Aqsa Fund is to finance projects aimed at preserving the Arab and Islamic identity of the city of Jerusalem, which means to reduce the Jewish identity of the city of Jerusalem.
One would think that that's what they mean by that,
Yeah,
right?
I think that's definitely what they mean by that. So UNRWA, by accepting money from the Al-Quds Fund, from the Al-Aqsa Fund, is not being neutral like they claim to be, because the entire...
They're not being neutral?
No, the entire purpose of the fund is to reduce Jewish influence in Jerusalem.
To reduce Jewish influence in Jerusalem.
Correct. But I'm a little bit more interested in the Al-Quds Intifada Fund, because the name of the fund is Intifada. The name of the fund is the uprising, is essentially terrorism. The Islamic Development Bank was in the news in 2007 because it received observer status at the UN.
Okay.
Very few banks receive observer status, but this Islamic Development Bank, which funds terror, and they admit it, they said it on their own webpage, it funds terror, it gives essentially an insurance policy to families of of terrorists, and saying, hey, if you're a terrorist and you get killed, then your family is set for life.
I'm shaking my head.
I know.
Can you tell me a little bit more about observer?
So, over here, they got observer status. They actually partner with the UN, and we're going to see in a minute, they partner with the UN Development Fund.
Okay.
And so they're highly enmeshed in both the UN and in paying for terrorism.
Not bad.
Yeah, that's a pretty good gig if you can get it.
Yeah, I think we got to go after them.
Yeah, and of course, this fits in well with Ban Ki-moon's effective support of terror that he mentioned. This is not the only article that was about it. National Review Online also mentioned about this, what they call the Bank of the Intifada, and it says, it mentioned that they have the program in partnership with the UN Development Program. The bank works together with the UNDP. Okay. So that means the bank is working both with the UN Development Program as well as with UNRWA, two different UN programs that are being funded or having money channeled between them and the Islamic Development Bank, which is supporting terror. There's an article over here from that was originally written by, this is the Global Muslim Brotherhood Watch, but they're quoting an article from Rachel Ehrenfeld and Alyssa Lappin about financial jihad. And they add a little bit of a fact about the Islamic Development Bank, saying that it also channeled UN funds to Hamas because there were bank records that were discovered by Israel in the West Bank and Gaza. So not only does it work together with the UN Development Program, it actually takes money from the UN Development Program and gives it to Hamas.
You've got my head shaking left to
Yes.
right.
So
Wow.
this is really, I mean, we have essentially, you know, there's no doubt that this bank funds terrorism. There's no doubt that it is well known for funding terrorism. They brag about it on their own website.
I know,
They
pretty
have
incredible.
the Intifada Fund. They call it the Intifada Fund, and they have and now UNRWA is taking money from them. Besides the UN Development Program, and besides the fact that they're observers in the UN.
What did you expect from UNRWA? Come on.
Yeah, not just UNRWA, from the entire UN.
Fair enough.
The only other point I'd like to make about this is that when this bank started, you know, it says over here in their table of contents, it started in October 2000 to give this support for the Intifada. The Intifada started officially in September 2000, 1 month before. It lasted for, it depends on how you count it, it lasted for 7, 8, 9 years, depending on how you want to define it. How long would the Intifada have lasted without being funded?
I wonder.
I don't know, but it's really interesting because the amount of money they gave, that the Arab League gave for these funds, was about $1 billion initially.
Wow.
About 200 million for the Intifada Fund, about 800 million for the Al-Quds, for the Al-Aqsa Fund, and it started immediately. It wasn't like, hey, we've seen the Palestinians fighting bravely against Israel for a year or two. Now we're going to help. No, barely started. The Intifada barely started. You know, the terror attacks, and this was not even at the point yet where they got to the bus bombings or anything like that. This is still where it was fairly fairly disorganized, and the money went in. Some of the money went to the PA, as well as some of the money went to the PLO from the Islamic Development Bank. I have other documentation on that.
Okay.
And that money ended up, and the PA and the PLO and Hamas together ended up accelerating the Intifada into what we now know it as the bus bombings and the suicide bombings and all the other things that they were doing. So
We should try to go out and get that much funding for ourselves.
that would be great.
I think we should do that.
If the Arabs could put together $1 billion, we can get 1/10 of that.
Or at least we could try. Okay,
We could
send in
try.
your money.
But at any rate, so some people know about this, but I don't think it's very well known how deeply enmeshed in terror this Islamic Development Bank is, and how deeply enmeshed it is with the UN.
I can't get over that people just can't see this kind of thing.
I was astonished. I hadn't done that. I hadn't noticed this until I even started looking at it with this little picture from UNRWA of getting money
I
from
know,
the
that
Al-Aqsa
just,
Fund.
it blows my mind, you know?
And they're very
Wow.
proud of it, of course. UNRWA, this is not the first time that UNRWA has done stuff with the Aqsa Fund as well. But but the Aqsa Fund really is, part of
A
this terror network,
Yep.
along with the Al-Quds Fund. So,
But thank you for pointing it out, because I got to tell you something. If you weren't doing the digging that you were doing, I don't think that anybody else would realize it as well.
usually not. A lot
No,
of the
but I
stuff
got to tell you
do-
something. I got to tell you, I'm really proud of you.
Oh, thanks, sir. Thanks, honey.
No problem, darling.
Okay.
You need to keep up this good work.
Thank you very much. Anyway, that's going to be it for now before I start being very embarrassed. I'm Elder,
Mrs. Elder.
and we'll talk to you next time.